Hello there, and welcome back to the Chap's Guide, the channel where we talk about men's lifestyle, self-development, and a host of other topics that will help you on your journey to chap nirvana. Now, whether it's meeting new friends, interacting with professional clients or people that you know in work, the art of rapport stands you in fantastic stead to improve the circumstances in your life. And it can mean the difference between professional success and personal failure. So today, I would like to give you some of my top tips on building rapport with the people that you meet to have best effect in your life. Now, the dictionary tells us that the definition for rapport is communication or a relationship with another person harmonious in nature. And there is definitely a science to building relationships with other people through the interactions that you have with them, or the term rapport. And my tip number one is quite simple, but it's often overlooked, and it has a magnificent effect on the people that you meet, and that is to know their name and use it in your interaction with the person that you meet. Now, it's as simple as finding out that the person that you're going to meet in a meeting, their first name. If their first name is John, greet them with the name John. And then sprinkle your conversation with them using the word John. Well, John, tell me about your holiday. So, John, what was your last career move? How did it go for you? This just lets the person know that you've taken an interest, you've discovered that what their name is, and you're using it to build that relationship, to break down that gap, because up until the moment you met, you were strangers. But if you can use somebody's given name in a conversation, it puts them at ease and it makes them feel as if they know you. It's a great way of breaking the ice. Now, there is a bit of a caveat to that. You don't need to use it too much, because it can become a little bit weird if you pepper every sentence with the word John. Then it looks like you're trying just that little bit too hard. So just now and again, once or twice in your conversation, just enough to let them know, to let them detect that you know their name and you're happy to call them by it. And don't forget, as we've just started this meeting, this interaction with a new person, don't forget to start it with a handshake. Although, of course, in the modern era with the COVID-19 virus being in existence, we don't have human-to-human contact very much these days. But assuming the normal world, and if people are comfortable to do that, start with a handshake, because that physical touch between two people immediately begins a bond, and people will feel more connected to you because they'll feel the warmth of your hand, the strength of your character through your handshake, and it just starts off that relationship perfectly. Now, my second tip actually follows very close on the heels of that one I've just given you about using somebody's name, and that's don't use an alternative to their name if you don't know their name. So a very commonly done thing in the UK especially, if you don't know somebody's name, you'll call them like mate or buddy or brother or whatever it may be. It seems as if you're trying to be a little bit more friendly, but it just shows you don't actually know their name and you're using an alternative instead. All right, mate, can you tell me where to go, mate? How are you, mate? And it sounds a little bit tacky to me personally. I dislike it. I would rather somebody not refer to me as anything at all if they don't know my name. And actually, if you don't know somebody's name and you're having to call them mate, well, this is a great opportunity to ask them their name and begin with an introduction. So if you've met them before and you've forgotten their name, well, that's not uncommon, all right? There's no shame in saying to the person, look, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. And they will tell you your name and that relationship will flourish from that point. But calling somebody buddy or mate or bruv or whatever you choose to do, or whatever the common thing is in your culture, it just makes it seem as if you haven't made the effort. Now, my tip number 3 is really about getting that conversation going and asking open questions that means that the person you're talking to can speak to you and have something to say. Now, I've spent pretty much an entire career involved in law enforcement, and a particularly large part of that has been centred around interviewing people, both offenders and witnesses, and victims, so I've spent a lot of time engaging with strangers and eliciting information from them. And one of the great ways to get people to talk to you is to ask open questions. What's an open question? It's a question that cannot be answered by either a yes or a no. It's a question which draws information from the person, which makes the person want to speak to you. It's not something like, give you an example, it's not, did you go on holiday anywhere this year? And the person can respond by saying either yes or no. An alternative would be, so where did you go on holiday this year? The answer will be, well, I went to X, Y, or Z, and a conversation begins. So asking open questions which are relevant to the context you're in, obviously, not just about holidays or the weather, but it really gets that conversation going. And when you've got that conversation going, you're on your way to building that rapport, a harmonious relationship with another person. Now, my fourth tip is about seeking common ground, because we've commenced our conversation with this person up until a moment ago who was a stranger. We've asked them some questions. If you're British, probably about the weather or probably about your holiday. It's like that conversation you have with your hairdresser when you're having your hair cut. They ask all of these questions to get a nice conversation going. Very much the same when you meet somebody new. But seek common ground, because that way you will have something to talk about in that initial conversation that will be interesting to both of you and will build that relationship. Now, what do I mean? Well, that can be cheated with as well. So if you know you're going to meet somebody, have a bit of a look around about them, find out who they are, what makes them tick. Look them up on LinkedIn, do a Google search on them. If they're, somebody who operates in your circle of acquaintances, ask somebody, tell me, I'm going to meet John next week. What's he like? What does he do? And find out something that he does that you're interested in. Could be sport, could be an interest around, an activity, mountain biking, skydiving, drinking in a certain pub, playing darts, wherever it may be. Seek that common ground, because common ground is really what makes people connect. And when you've got that, you can really get that conversation going and start building that rapport. Now, my tip number 5 is something that you should consider very closely with the last tip about building that conversation, getting it going, and that's to avoid contentious topics that may actually be more damaging than building in that rapport building relationship. Because, we all know the difficulty if you start talking to somebody and, you start speaking about politics, you start speaking about religion, and you discover that the person you're talking to has got a totally opposed opinion to yourself, and then you find it very difficult to go forwards in a harmonious conversation. So be very careful, avoid speaking about those topics that are likely to have friction and are likely to have a negative impact on the person you're speaking to. Now, of course, there's a 50-50 chance in some cases, if you're talking about politics or religion, that the person you're talking to will have the same opinion as you, which would be good. You then got common ground. But there's too much risk. I would avoid those contentious topics that are likely to break down the bridge that you're attempting to build. So just avoid them. Go for the happy common ground. Now, my tip number 6 is to truly practice the art of active listening. So many people, when it comes to conversation building, right, will quite simply be listening to the conversation and waiting for an opportunity where they can get into the conversation with their point. And they will just put their point across, step out, somebody else will speak, and then you will be waiting again for your opportunity to put your opinions in. And this does not build a very positive conversation. It becomes quite fragmented, and it's just people putting, their points of opinion across. Active listening means truly listening, absorbing, and considering what the other person is saying. And when they've had their full opportunity to speak, then you use your time to speak in the same manner, and hopefully the other person will be equally courteous and will listen to you in the same way. Now, a really great way of remembering this is that if you're speaking more than you're listening, you're not active listening. You're talking too much. A good conversation, a good chat in a conversation, it's all about drawing information, getting that other person to speak, which makes them feel more confident, more at ease with you. They feel as if they're truly having an enjoyable interaction. And the way to do that, of course, is when you speak to the person, use the TED method. Ask questions which start with tell me, explain, and describe. And that way the person will speak more fluently and will give you more information and will feel as if they're really enjoying the conversation, and you have to be an active listener, taking it all in and then asking further questions based upon what they've said to you. It's very different to how many people approach a conversation. Just sneaking in at a gap and trying to get the floor so that they can speak. That doesn't make for a good conversation. And another good way of thinking about this is remember the ratio. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should be listening twice as much as you're speaking for a good conversation to flow. If you employ the act of active listening, you will be an excellent conversationalist. Now, a really good way of building a relationship with somebody is the peepers, the eyes. Make eye contact. Make genuine eye contact with the person that you're talking to. Now, I don't mean stare willfully into the eyes of the person you're talking to like some sort of psychopath who's about to be a serial killer. Just make eye contact naturally. Don't stare at them in the eyes, glance away every so often, but don't be afraid to make eye contact. So many people, when they're speaking, feel a little bit self-conscious about meeting the other person's eye. They'll glance down, they look everywhere but in the eyes of the person that they're talking to. And as human beings, we put a great deal of stead subconsciously on making eye contact. So if the person that you're speaking to isn't making eye contact with you, it makes us feel a little bit suspicious of them. It makes us feel less trusting of what they're going to say. So good eye contact is really important, but not staring willfully at them, just natural eye contact. Break it every so often, but make eye contact, and it holds the attention of the person that you're talking to, and it'll make for a really natural, really enjoyable conversation. Well, thank you for listening to my 7 tips to win friends and influence people through building great rapport when you meet people. And because you've listened this far, I'm going to give you a bonus. And that is this. Right? You can weaponize these initial meetings with people, these initial conversations, if you just do a little bit of research. You don't have to be a detective. All you have to do are use the tools which are available to you. I've already talked about, being prepared for that conversation by going on LinkedIn or Google and finding out a little bit more about the person that you're going to meet, if you know that you're going to meet them, obviously, and you know their name and so on. And if you can do that, if you know that they're a member of a certain club or a member of a certain association or group of people, and it's something that you have an interest in as well, get yourself a lapel badge for that situation and wear it, and it'll be a fantastic icebreaker. Now, in a previous video, I think I mentioned the fact that I went for a job interview some time ago. I did this research on the people who were going to interview me. I discovered that one of them was an officer in the military reserve, and as a result of that information, I wore my veterans badge, my military veterans badge, which is identifiable by anybody who served in the military. And true to form, that person recognized the badge, and it was the first thing he said to me. "Hello, I see you've been in the military. Where did you serve?" And it was a fabulous icebreaker, and it jumped us forward in that rapport building situation by leaps and bounds. And it's something you can do too with a little bit of research if you find yourself in a situation where you can do research. So give it a try. See if it can leap your forward relationship and build some rapport too. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video today on building rapport and winning friends and influence amongst others. And if you have, well, I would encourage you to give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you've enjoyed the video. And while you're doing that, think about subscribing to our channel as well. That way you won't miss any of our future material. And you can even influence our future material by giving us a comment in the comment section below. Tell us what you think about today's conversation and suggest something you'd like to hear in the future. So, until the next time, take care, win friends and influence people using your skills of rapport. And until the next time, take care of yourselves.